Hello, everyone. Welcome to Understanding Social Media and Safe Usage Guidelines for Parents, brought to you by Three Cities Public Library. My name is Matt.
And my name is Mike, and we have together about 20 years each of computer and internet experience. We both work in the IT field, and we're also both parents as well.
Yes, we both have children who have grown up with all of these devices and these social medias at the forefront of everything they do. We're going to try to educate you today on a little bit of some social media safe usage guidelines and just some red flags to watch for if your kid's on too much social media or anything like that. So first we'll start off with the most popular social media platform, which is still Facebook, oddly enough. A lot of times it's looked at as the boomer platform. And then YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok are just behind that with 1 billion active users, which TikTok is the fastest growing and potentially the most dangerous. So we're going to be talking a lot about that one today for sure. Some statistics. North America uses about 7 social media accounts each, North Americans, 11 and a half accounts per person in India, and Japan's sitting at about 4. Which is that's quite a bit. So that includes business accounts, duplicate accounts, just any sort of account on any sort of social media platform. Which makes a lot of sense since there's so many of them out there these days. The average person spends about 145 minutes, which is almost 2.5 hours, staring at social media a day.
Well, and as for the folks that have kids with cell phones, on average at 2.5 hours might even almost seem low, really.
Yeah, that's right. And even low for an adult to be staring at their screens. But that's just the average, right? Your mileage may vary. So social media and its relationship to mental health is largely detrimental, studies have found. But almost 40% of users say they are addicted to social media. And that is
scary.
Yes, it is scary. And that's not just children, that's adults as well.
Not like use social media a lot. Literally, if it was removed from their life, they would have anguish and withdrawal syndrome.
So research shows that there's a correlation between social media use and depression among adolescents. And I think a lot of that is from the comparing your life to someone they follow on social media's life. And that's not comparable. And so the kids take that in and it makes them very depressed and they struggle with that a lot. So adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media have an increased risk of mental health struggles. So make sure you're watching and keeping track of how many hours your kid is on social media. I'm pretty sure most platforms, you have to be 13 to open an account. But I think you can open them earlier with your parents' permission. But a lot of parents don't monitor that.
And there's no checks in place. If someone was to just click the button and move forward, then it's done, right? I mean, with this one here, it's like all things, moderation is key. It's important to set those kind of standards in and out of the house of usage of those devices.
That's right. Set those guidelines early as well. Like if you want to use these platforms, you have to follow these guidelines. And so there's some warning signs of unhealthy social media habits: excessive screen time, spending too much time online, staring at their computer can be detrimental. Look for sudden behavior changes, mood swings. A lot of this is going to sound like we're just describing teenagers to you.
It's going to be difficult to tell.
But I think you know your child well enough to know if there's a wild swing. If they become withdrawn or irritable, or if they're being very secretive of their device, of what you can see on their screen, or they're hiding it a lot. All of that is red flags.
A good rule in place, especially like what we do in our house, is essentially I just say, hey, let me take a look at that, and then you immediately turn your device over, right? At any point, if the device is clutched or turned away, or you see them frantically closing apps, that's an opportunity to have a discussion, right? And that's kind of what it all comes down to, is a lot of communication. It's not an opportunity to get upset and throw a fit in that space, but more like, hey, what are you hiding on this thing?
Cyberbullying. So watch for signs of cyberbullying. A lot of times the negative comments, kids will take them to heart. And people on the internet are cruel. They'll say whatever without any sort of repercussions. So there's no worries about that. Watch for some isolation. If your child is being very withdrawn and they're not coming out of the room for long periods of time, which may seem normal for some teens, but if they really don't want to be social with their friends, that's a big red
Yeah.
flag.
Yeah. Big life changes, right?
Mhm.
Immediate changes.
Obsessive comparison, we've mentioned this before. With Instagram is probably the biggest culprit, but a kid will compare their life to someone else that they're following
Hmm.
and form that unhealthy parasocial relationship with them and wonder why their life isn't as glamorous or as fun as this person's
Yeah.
life.
It's getting harder to tell what is and isn't real out there as well, right? Like, it's there's the obvious celebrities, but then there's the folks that seem like just regular everyday Joes on Instagram
Mhm.
where they're everything is just staged and produced, and it's good to have a conversation about just because it appears to be one way doesn't necessarily mean that's how it actually is.
That's right. I would just a good rule of thumb is to assume it's all fake.
Nothing's real.
Nothing's real online. Excessive validation seeking. So they'd be like posting and then wondering why they're not getting as many likes as their friends. A lot of times, likes and comments make a kid feel good, like
Mhm.
they're being validated by
Yep.
strangers, which can become a dependence.
Yeah. And systems like TikTok have algorithms in there to, inflate these videos, right? Certain videos will receive more likes just because it has deemed that one as one that needs to be popular. And it senses when you start to pull away from the app, that's when it'll give you one that gives a good amount of reactions and feedback in order to pull you back into it and continue producing content for the platform.
That's right. So spending a lot of time online will eventually lead to sleep disturbances. They'll be staying up late to watch videos, interact, engage, and it's so detrimental to their mental health. Kids need sleep,
Hmm.
like a good 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
So make sure they're not sneaking in devices into their rooms or
Yeah, look into settings that are on either your network or I know like
the phone settings.
the phone settings. My kids have the Amazon Fire tablets, and there's a parental dashboard that you can download for your own devices. And that actually allows me to immediately halt all devices or set time frames when they are and are not accessible. So I have those set up as basically schedules. The tablets are available during this period of time for this many hours, and then once that has run out, it basically shuts it off. There's no way to get out of that.
And they also have built-in screen time apps on Apple and Android
Hmm.
devices as well.
Hmm.
So make sure you look into those. They just can be found in the settings. Secretive behavior, like we mentioned, the kids hiding screens, passwords, that type of thing.
You should always strive for open communication where, and I see that we're coming up to that point too, but where you're able to just talk about it no matter what, that there isn't a level of defense. You're not going in to attack. You're going in to ensure you're both on the same page.
That's right. Yeah, it's how you approach the subject, I think, makes a
Hmm.
big difference.
Hmm.
So here's some usage guidelines and recommendations. So set up age-appropriate limits on their devices. Like you can set for a lot of the streaming services, you can set age limits for what kind of content they're watching and what they can be
Hmm.
what they can be seen. And you can do the same for social media platforms too. I know a lot of them are moderated already, so you won't find a lot of like nudity or anything like that on them.
Hmm.
But some stuff does slip through the cracks, and so you can set some of their viewing settings on the platform settings itself. And like Mike mentioned, open communication is so
It's really
important.
key.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is actually to establish that line of communication, keep it open.
Hmm.
Then they can feel like they can come to you with these, like a report of someone harassing them online or
Yeah.
something like that, or if they've been blackmailed potentially.
Yeah.
That's a big issue. If someone will try to blackmail your child, and if
Yeah.
they're unfamiliar with that scam specifically, they might be afraid to go to a parent about that.
Hmm.
And that's becoming more and more popular these days, especially with apps like Snapchat.
Yeah.
Make sure you educate on the privacy settings of your devices as well, so that the teens are familiar with them, and the importance of securing their online identity.
Yeah. Yeah, in most cases, there's no need to share your location in any device or any application. So do make sure that you go through and you essentially set to the least amount of access possible.
Also, tell them to think before they post. A lot of times they'll think, "Oh, I'm posting this. it'll be really funny, or they think it'll be a good video.
Like
And
edgy or even.
yeah, it really is. Yeah, sometimes people can be pretty cruel. And someone might post something thinking this is really funny, and then they end up getting their feelings hurt, or it spreads around
Mhm.
their school. They think they're only sending it to one friend, and then that friend, records it or something and spread it around. Stuff like that you can never remove from the internet.
Mhm.
Essentially, I say it's like kind of trying to get pee out of a pool. It's not going to happen. It's there forever.
Yeah, and I mean, employers also look at social media platforms, so it's important to educate your kids on the fact that it may be funny now, and it may be an inside joke or something like that. But if it's made public and someone's able to find it, they will, and that could potentially lead to future ramifications.
Make sure they balance online and offline time. We mentioned staring at screens for hours and hours and hours, but also get them to go outside and do face to face things with people. That human interaction, there's no replacement for that,
Mhm.
although they will try, but
Yeah,
there really isn't.
yeah, you end up being the controller of that. So to kick them outside, turn the devices off. Again, in the open communication, right? Identifying like, look, you've spent a lot of time on this today. Let's go and take a break. And a lot of times that leads with you too. I know for myself, in order to really drive that point home, that means that I'm going to do it too. And so we'll go out as a family unit, go take a walk, or we'll go outside and do some yard work or whatever it is, just something to get away from the technology for a while.
And don't be afraid to be firm.
Hmm.
If you set up these limitations, there's going to be some pushback, and if they are really pushing back hard and they're very angry about this, those are withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah.
Like that's signs of addiction.
Signs of addiction.
So make sure that they're aware of what their digital footprint means. So we have another video about this that you could watch as well. But digital footprint basically is the amount of data you're putting out there on the internet,
Mhm.
and that includes personal data, pictures, videos, all that stuff that
Mhm.
basically tell the world about yourself.
A little trail of breadcrumbs that makes up you.
That's right. And it's really good to keep that in mind, because you can limit identity theft and harassment, that type of thing. Also, teach them how to report inappropriate behavior. Chances are, if they're online long enough, someone's going to harass them or bully them or do something inappropriate towards them. And so, if you can teach them to report it, then they can kind of take care of that themselves. And then, if you've got that line of communication open, then they can come to you with it as well. Because a
Mhm.
lot of times, the reports, they don't work instantly. There might be some time before there's some action there, and they might be able to come to you with some issues they have. And make sure you model responsible behavior. Right, this changes start at home. They see what you are doing. So if you're sitting there scrolling TikTok while you're having family time watching a movie, then they're going to think it's okay to do that too.
Yeah. Yeah, always be mindful of your own actions, and it's just like anything else. I learned it from you,
I learned
right?
from watching you.
And so it's important that you champion the change and make sure that you're setting the example that you want them to walk in. It's going to be hard, but it will be worth it.
Moving on to the platforms themselves, we're going to start with Facebook. So Facebook's been around I think pretty much the longest.
Mhm.
And it's still the largest one out there. So they have filed thousands of patents since they've went public, and a lot of them are pretty creepy. So here's a list of some, and these can be found in the link in the QR code at the end of this presentation. But basically, they start with reading your relationships, so that's knowing who you're friends with, who you hang out with, who you work with, all of that stuff. Classifying your personality, so they want to know whether you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. If you're friends with a lot of
You like
expatriates,
dogs.
if you like dogs, what kind of TV shows you like, all that stuff. Predicting your future, like where it thinks you're going to go to school, where it thinks you're going to move next, who it thinks you're going to start dating,
Potentially manipulating that
and
to
potentially manipulating that
to the
into
highest bidder.
whatever direction they want. So, say you're looking at going to this school. If the Facebook has a deal with another school, they'll get advertisements from that one school and try to steer you one way or the other. A lot of this essentially is for advertising purposes. They keep a profile of all this information on you and then try to advertise to you more efficiently. One is identifying your camera. So if you've got scratches on it, or little smudges, anything like that, it will remember that and know that if you've taken a picture here, a picture there, and say you take a picture of someone else's phone and you're in it, it'll know the difference between your camera and that person's camera. This is a big one. Listening to your environment. If you've got your app open, there's a patent that says they will activate the microphone to listen to your surroundings to see what kind of TV shows you're watching and what kind of commercials and any sort of background noise like that, so they can advertise to you. So if you ever have been having a conversation with someone while Facebook was open and then you see a bunch of advertisements for whatever you were talking about, this would be why. And that's a bad one. Tracking your routine. This one is pretty much already active in most platforms. So if you're going to finish your day off at work, 4:30 rolls around, and then your phone says, "Hey, your trip home, this is the fastest way to get there." That is what this is, basically. It knows when you're going home, going to work, anything like that.
When you're hungry.
When you're hungry, it'll push you. If it knows you like burritos, it'll push you towards whatever
Nearest
burrito place is has a deal with Facebook at that time. And it also will infer your habits. And a lot of this stuff is just, like I said, mentioned, it's just going straight into a big profile about you that they use to advertise to.
And then leading into this.
Leading into the algorithm. So basically what the algorithm is it shows you what you want to see based on the algorithm being a mathematical equation. So if you are, Facebook's is particularly specific. It will show you only things that it thinks you will engage with, leading you into an echo chamber. So if you only like pro-Trump stuff, you'll get a bunch of pro-Trump stuff. If you like pro-liberal stuff, a whole bunch of pro-liberal stuff will come. Essentially, that's all you'll see. So it leads to confirmation biases.
You'll start to think that that's all that is out there, because there is no other
dissenting opinion.
Yeah.
So you'll end up thinking that that Facebook is real life when it isn't. TikTok. So this is the biggest one that kids are using these days. It's owned by the Chinese internet company ByteDance. And ByteDance is owned by the Chinese Communist Party, which is like the Chinese government. And they have servers in China that they host all this information in. And I think they're moving it over to the US eventually, but I don't think they have yet. But that's a big problem, because all that data about all of your users, and basically if you install TikTok on your phone, you give it access to your contacts, your pictures, basically every piece of information on your phone, and it's being stored in just some server in China. And that can lead to potentially, say you're 20 years, your kid's running for president or prime minister, and then there's some picture they had in their camera roll 20 years ago, and China knows about it. They can potentially use this to blackmail a potential political candidate. Mm-hmm. And so TikTok has been banned in India. It's been banned off of military devices in the US. I think in Canada as well. Our Canadian military, they're not allowed to have TikTok on their phone.
Government officials as well.
Government officials. And that essentially is the reason the app cannot be trusted. And so it also has a really predatory algorithm. So we mentioned the Facebook algorithm is sort of an echo chamber. This one is a little bit different. It leads kids down suicidal and self-harm posts within about 2 minutes of being active on the app. So a brand new account was created, mm-hmm. and using just the location data of it being in the US, it was fed pro-suicide and pro-self-harm posts almost immediately. And that was mainly for boys and for some women as well. Mm-hmm. For men, they get pointed towards misogynistic materials, and for women, they get pointed towards self-harm and lose
body
weight
image.
And body image issues, mm-hmm. stuff like that. So then this is an algorithm that was essentially coded to do this type of thing.
Yeah. And you will hear, if you bring this conversation up with your kids, or if you're someone who uses TikTok, you'll say, well, that I don't get any of that on my feed. And that's because the system learns from what you do and don't like. So by default, if you were just to watch these videos, that's the direction it would point you in. As you're using it, it's learning what you do and don't like, and it will actually curtail your specific feed directly to what you do like. And you'll start to see that pretty soon all of the videos will be in that kind of same world, but they don't start that way. It takes time
learn.
to learn about you. And so that's the part that's really scary, is that if you start down this path and all of a sudden you start liking these videos, or you start going through and more and more and more, pretty soon the only world, if we talk about the Facebook echo chamber, it's the same kind of concept here. Those are the only videos that you're actually seeing in this environment.
Snapchat. So Snapchat's pretty popular, and this was basically an app for like picture messaging, and then they added in a map, which by default is turned on. So if you take a photo and then share it out to your public story, it also has your map location on it as well, and it's not turned off by default. It's turned on, and you have to go in and opt out.
Yeah. It gives you one, I think when you open it up, it brings up a screen, says, do you want to share your location data? And if you choose yes, it does not come back up again. You have to go into the settings and turn it off. It will always be on from that point forward.
And so Snapchat is not a professional app. I've heard some users saying, some parents saying that their kid is using Snapchat to communicate with some of their
people at work.
Yeah, bosses, supervisors, etc. That's a big red
That's
flag.
not okay. That's not okay.
That's a big red flag. Because the pictures and messages disappear, there could be some shady stuff going on there, and you might want to follow up on that.
There's no, that puts a situation together where there is no possible way to prove what was said without saving or screenshotting something in the app. And it would be better just to avoid that full on. If there's a work group, there's many messaging apps that can be utilized, even the default one that's on the device. And obviously that would always be the recommendation, because you will always have a log of what the discussion was up to that point.
Almost literally anything is better than Snapchat in a work situation.
If somebody wants to speak specifically in Snapchat, there's a reason for that. And it's likely because they want to say things that they don't have to be held accountable for.
That's right. And so we mentioned blackmail methods. So this Snapchat is the biggest one for that. So say your son or daughter has added a friend that they don't know specifically, and then they get friendly. They think it's a real person, and they're sort of essentially getting catfished. So they'll send them a picture. It may be racy. And then that person will say, hey, I'm going to send this to everyone in your contacts list unless you send me $400 or a bunch of Bitcoin, whatever. Either way,
I'm going to ruin your life unless you do this.
That's right. And so then they're terrified. And then hopefully they'll come to you with that. But it is very common for a Snapchat user.
Yeah.
And so like we mentioned, the Snap Maps, essentially what it looks like. It is, it's essentially pretty creepy.
It's scary, yeah. And literally anybody who has the app can see this. So if your location data is on, and you post the public stories, someone will see that and have the ability to find you directly.
Yeah, you can search essentially by location. Instagram, we mentioned. Instagram is sort of that platform where you compare your life to whoever else is the highlight reel of their life. It's owned by the same company that owns Facebook, which is called Meta, and it collects all the same data on you that Facebook does. And it's obviously using it for advertising. So you'll see pretty specific advertisements based on whatever you've been surfing. YouTube is owned by Google, so they have a lot of information on you just because Google is, one of the biggest companies in the world. Mm-hmm. Google and Amazon have probably the biggest cache of data on you. And the biggest problem with YouTube is that oftentimes it's the videos posted there will just play back to back to back. Mm-hmm. And some of them can be pretty inappropriate depending on the material in the video. YouTube Kids platform, which it bills itself as like a safe place for kids to be, had a bunch of controversy.
It's not.
It's definitely not.
Don't use it.
Basically what it does, it grabs a bunch of videos from a YouTube Kids pool, which are a video that's posted. You can set it so it just shows up specifically on YouTube Kids, and then it will play for them, and it's sort of billed as safe. And users will create pretty horrible videos using cartoon characters, and it'll just play again, like back to back, and your kid will see it without any sort of oversight.
Yeah, a recommendation here, instead of using the YouTube Kids app, is to create a YouTube account and then curtail a specific playlist of videos that you approve. You can then share that specific playlist with your kids or have the devices set up to just play that playlist. That gives you the opportunity to essentially filter out anything that's inappropriate, and it locks the viewing session into those specific videos. There are good videos on YouTube, right? The pool is not all bad, but like Matt said, his analogy about pee in the pool, there is no way to get those bad videos out either. The only true safe method is for you yourself to essentially filter those videos into a specific playlist, and then that creates essentially a safe environment to watch those videos in.
That's right. A lot of times you'll hear us mention supervision or oversight. Essentially, all of these issues can be curtailed with a little bit of oversight from the parent.
Yeah, leaving your devices unchecked with your kids is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea.
Yeah, bad. Don't do that. And so this, we'd mentioned that YouTube's kids controversy was called Elsagate. And basically, a lot of the videos were Spider-Man and Elsa doing very inappropriate things, and they would play back to back to back, and tons of it had like millions and millions of views. They've been removed now, so
these ones are gone.
These ones specifically,
but other videos exist.
Yes, that's right. Roblox is another a big up and coming platform. It's not essentially a social media platform.
Yeah, these types of games are online only. MMOs or massively multiplayer online games. The biggest thing is that this Roblox in particular is marketed towards that kind of, young to preteen era children. The issue though is that there is no way to tell who your child is actually talking to. While your children may be talking to other children, they may also be talking to someone posing as such, and there are no checks and balances in here to essentially safely play this game without those online components.
That's right. They'll go into a multiplayer server that's filled with people. They've got voice chat and regular text chat. So if you're texting with someone, you have no idea who it is. And in voice chats, there's voice changers.
Changers
adults
exist.
Can sound like kids. There's all sorts of dangers there.
So they video filters that can make them look like young kids as well. It's the other thing is the game is based off of user generated content, and so that means that essentially anybody could create a level that has very inappropriate content inside, and your kids wouldn't know that until they get to that point. So these types of games, I would at least at the bare minimum recommend that you have a large amount of parental supervision over, and have those conversations with your kids that just because they say they are a 12-year-old kid to you does not mean that that's actually who they are. People do lie on the internet, and you need to be safe at all times.
Another big one is X, formerly Twitter. This platform allows nudity. There's not many kids that use Twitter, I don't think, but it's still something to watch for. And there's a huge percentage of fake accounts from foreign countries trying to just argue, right? Like this is the platform for arguing.
Yeah, a lot of bots too. A lot of just kind of advertising. I know, for example, like a lot of posts on there are for generating ad revenue, not only for companies, but for things like, OnlyFans and inappropriate things. So it's definitely not a platform that you'd want your kids to be involved with if you're able to avoid that at all.
That's right. And a lot of the conversations are just so toxic too.
Yeah. There's parental controls in there, but obviously those can always be superseded. So it's use at your best judgment, but I'd always recommend against it.
That's right. So the conclusion today, knowledge is power. Educate yourself on the social media trends and risks and what platforms your kids are using. Be the change. Make sure your kid is looking at you as a positive role model when it comes to social media use. And supervision is absolutely necessary. Make sure that you're watching over and being as secure as possible.
Yeah, keep the communication lines open so that they know no matter what, they can always come to you. And you're not going to lose it on them, right? You don't want a situation where they're afraid to tell you what's going on. You need to ensure that no matter what, under any circumstances, whatever the situation is, you'll figure it out together, and they need to feel that safe space.
And that's it. That's it for us. Thanks for listening. Till next time.
Yeah, have a great day. We'll see you.
Bye.